Hi, I'm Stephanie Hartung. I'm a Needham resident, and I am a professor at Northeastern University School of Law. I also serve on the board of the New England Innocence Project. So Mr. Henry, with the assistance of his pro bono counsel, has sued the town of Needham and the police department essentially for various acts of police misconduct, which amount to violations of his constitutional rights. And the way they've done that is through a federal lawsuit that's authorized under a federal statute, which is Section 1983. And this just codifies violations of civil rights by state actors, which is what has happened here. So Mr. Henry is alleging civil rights violations by members of the Needham Police Department, in particular for false arrest, which is arrest without appropriate probable cause, and for other related damages in terms of violations of his Fourth and 14th Amendment rights. And this is from an incident that occurred in Needham, where there was an allegation of shoplifting. Mr. Henry was detained and immediately handcuffed without cause, is the allegation, that there was no indication that he was dangerous or that he had an intent to flee, and yet he was immediately handcuffed. That's one of the allegations raised in the lawsuit. Additionally, he was detained for 30 minutes, even though there were all sorts of indications of his innocence, including his own possession of a receipt for the items that he had just recently purchased at CVS. This evidence of innocence was largely ignored, and the police instead focused on Mr. Henry meeting a very generic description of a shoplifter in the store. He only met the description insofar as he was Black and male, but otherwise didn't meet the physical description, wasn't wearing the same clothing, and there were a number of other factors that supported his factual innocence, and yet he was detained in a very public place for 30 minutes. So those are the basic facts that support the allegations that he's raising in his lawsuit. He is seeking monetary damages, both compensatory and punitive damages, but also what's called injunctive relief. And in some ways, this is the kind of cornerstone of what he seems to be asking for, which is compelling additional police reform in Needham based on this incident. So in part by encouraging additional training among Needham police to help address some of the failures that happened in this incident. For example, aside from what I've mentioned already, it appears that members of the Needham Police Department violated their own policy in several regards, not only by immediately handcuffing Mr. Henry without cause, but also, although this man was detained and held in handcuffs for 30 minutes in town, they never generated a police report about the incident, and this also directly violated their policy. So there are a number of aspects to the scenario here that suggest a need for further training and reform among the police department. So as I said, I'm a Needham resident also. I'm a taxpayer in Needham. And I think what's interesting here and what we can all think about and learn from is that we're in a position now where our taxpayer dollars are going toward attorney fees and the defense against, after the fact of an incident and allegation of police misconduct in our town. And, I guess what we want to ask ourselves is that where we want our taxpayer dollars to go, or would we rather see our money go toward preventative measures to help train the police and develop a culture within the Needham Police Department in a way that would minimize the chances of these kinds of incidents happening again? And I know for me, I'd much rather see my own taxes going toward the preventative measures. And I think that Also, we should recognize, we are at a moment where police reform discussions are really at the forefront. And so it's an opportunity for the town of Needham to be a part of that discourse and to make meaningful change in response to this really tragic and unfortunate incident that caused significant harm to Mr. Henry, and to our community. And so I think that members of the town could think about, what changes do we want to see in our police department? In the past couple of months, there have been important public conversations that have occurred among the select board and with the police department toward efforts of achieving greater accountability and data transparency in policing in Needham. And so it's one thing to make that promise, but it's another thing to see how that data is going to be made available, who's going to have access to it, what kind of review of the data is going to happen. And I think all of these things are important for residents of Needham to pay attention to moving forward.